𝗓𝗓𝗪. The last time I spoke about this in a video, I was calling for an upward swing. I was wrong, quite massively so. We saw a huge break to the downside, and in this video we're going to be jumping down into the data for 𝗓𝗓𝗪 to see whether or not we are going to the moon or whether or not more downside is expected. As I get into the video, if you find it useful and informative, you know what to do. Hit the like button, I appreciate that. If you're new to the channel, stay up to date with the live streams and the videos that we do here by subscribing and tapping the bell. If you haven't joined us in Discord, link is in the description below, and with all that said, let's get into it. So let's talk about 𝗓𝗓𝗪. So 𝗓𝗓𝗪 on the hourly chart here paired up with Binance USD, and we can see that we actually saw this pretty big break to the downside. Now, last time I was talking about this, we were talking about this area just here, basically being a triangular wedge. And at this particular time, unlike these previous areas, so this one over here, for example, and this one over here, we actually saw ourselves setting us up with lower highs and higher lows, basically getting into this triangular wedge. Now, from our stochastic RSI at this point in time, we were actually oversold. So I was calling for maybe a swing to the upside based on not only the stochastic RSI, but a contraction within the Bollinger Bands. So with those things actually taking us in the opposite direction, it was kind of key to figure out what went wrong and why did we see such a volatile movement to the downside. And well, I think I have the answer to that. 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗏. Now, 𝗕𝗘𝗪 decided that they were going to list a new contract where people could leverage trade on 𝗓𝗓𝗪 at 1,000 times its usual rate. And so as a result of this, we saw an increase in volatility. Okay, and we can see that these hot coins with zero fees, for example, 𝗓𝗓𝗪 paired with USDT, and then we got the new listing down on this side here at 1,000 LUNC paired with USDT. And as you see, this is 1,000 times more than the standard pair. And as a result of this, we saw an increase in volatile movements within the price action of 𝗓𝗓𝗪. Now, we can go a little bit deeper. We can come into CoinGlass here and actually take a look at 𝗓𝗓𝗪 long and short ratios across the various different platforms to try to figure out whether there's big, massive swings in this data that is basically steering us. And basically what we can see here is, for the most part, there have been some pretty volatile swings at the macro level, right? So for example, if we come back to our data here, we can see that on the 9th of September, we saw this downward move, right? And if we come over to our longs and shorts positions for the 9th, we can see that actually we're about 49.13% short with 50.87% long, meaning that the pocket of liquidity was actually greater at the lower side than the higher side. So if someone was trying to game the system, they were essentially looking at this and saying, actually, yeah, we could probably be pushing the price to the downside and actually gain a bigger position. So from any kind of whale positions, if you're a whale in LUNC 𝗓𝗓𝗪𝗏, for example, then that's kind of how you might be perceiving the market, looking for those opportunities. Then, of course, we have this by platform where we can see the sentiment in the last 1 hour on this 𝗓𝗓𝗪𝗏 long and short ratio. Now, here we can see that actually, for the most part, it's feeling a little bit on the bearish side, at least most recently. It definitely seems to be on OKX, for example, 45% in the long position and 54.96% in the short position. And that's pretty common across these boards. It's swinging definitely more towards shorting the market than going long on the market. This will, of course, mean that pockets of liquidity are slightly higher in the price chart, so do potentially expect some price volatility, with price perhaps moving up to liquidate those positions. Okay, so let's now take a look at the new 1,000 𝗓𝗓𝗪𝗏 long and short ratio. Okay, we see this is only really available on 2 exchanges. We see it on Binance and we see it on 𝗕𝗪𝗪. Okay, and we can see that 𝗕𝗪𝗪 here is again feeling more bearish than Binance, with 53.28% in short positions versus long positions. Okay, and for Binance here, we're talking 51.31 in short. So overall, we're just swinging it towards the shorting position, which means the sentiment is negative rather than positive for 𝗓𝗓𝗪𝗏 at the moment. But obviously, this is going to carry a lot more weight to it because it's 1,000 times more powerful than just leverage trading on your standard 𝗓𝗓𝗪𝗏 contract. So when we come back to the price chart, and we can see, okay, so basically Bybit listed a new contract, and that had this huge volatile movement to the downside, probably because they were opening up into significant positions here in the upside, as in there was pockets of liquidity moving down here because the longs were taking hold. Now, obviously, with this move to the downside, what does this mean? Well, we completed this move. We have an overlapping structure, but should we be concerned? And yes, is for the most part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this down. So essentially what we've got is we've got these areas here where we're lower lows and lower highs. These tend to break to the upside. We can see these two examples just here. Over this side, however, we are going higher highs and higher lows, and unfortunately these tend to break to the downside. So let me just map this in for you. As we just pull this up, we've got a couple of different ways. We can take that high wick, we can take this one here. Doesn't really matter which one of these, subjected to how you want to do it. And if I take it from this particular wick here over to this one, you can kind of see this exact parallel channel here. Okay, so from here we can potentially move up, and we could probably test this higher channel once more before moving down. Okay, and in the case of the fact that we have an increase in short positions, we might see just that before then increasing the long positions before doing this. Okay, so this is a very bearish kind of signal, and I would expect this to break us to the downside, but I wouldn't necessarily say that's going to happen right away. I would say by looking at the positions here and seeing that they are slightly more bearish than bullish, I would be more inclined to say that we might move the price up before pulling down just to liquidate those positions. And unfortunately, that is kind of what happens in an unregulated space with leverage trading. So we have to be very, very cautious if we are to use anything with leverage trading. So with that being said, this is kind of the expectation. Now let's take a look at our stochastic RSI. On our hourly chart, this can actually come up, but it could also go down. So we could just break straight to the downside. Our Bollinger Bands are getting squeezed as well. So potentially even by the time this video has gone out, this squeeze on this hourly chart is going to either break to the upside or to the downside. Based on those leverage positions, I'm thinking probably to the upside, but it'd be interesting to kind of see how that maps out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw on some Elliott wave theory to kind of help us understand whether or not we're going to see this significant swing to the upside or not. Okay, so let's go ahead and first of all marry up this. We can see that from this low side here, we have a three-wave structure to this point. If I take this high and I take this low, and I were to pull this over to this low over this side here, for example, we can see that a potential move up here to this higher trend line is definitely something possible around the 618, the 702, and the 786. The 1-to-1 ratio is up there at 0.00059,232, and I think that's a little bit of too much of a push. Okay, let's take a look at a different angle on this. We do see a pretty decent three-wave structure to move to the downside, and we could also break this to the downside as well under a bigger three-wave structure. This would actually take us down slightly lower towards 0.00039,096, and that would be in down here. And I'm just going to quickly mark that one up just at the point of interest, just down here, 0.96. I'm just going to go ahead and just map that there, and then I'm going to remove that. Okay. We'll also just map that other one back on here for a second as well, just so that we have a clear clarity over where we think that high point is going to be. I'm just going to put a price tag up here, and it's going to be approximately there. I'm not going to finesse it too much. 232, 232, just about there. Okay, so those are kind of the two swings that we could see from our Bollinger Band contraction. And personally, I think upward directional move is more likely, but I don't think we'll quite reach as high as that move up there. If anything, I think we'll probably be testing this upper area of resistance as well, which also coincides with our trend line. So about a 24% bump in price, possibly. That would liquidate all those positions. That would also get us up into the overbought area on our hourly chart. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the 4-hour. The 4-hour gives us a stochastic RSI that is oversold. So an upward swing would basically take our 4-hour chart back to that overbought area as well. So something to keep a close eye on. Now, if I throw the Bollinger Bands into here, we can see that we are, actually nowhere near a contraction. We are below the mid band, and we could be looking at pulling down towards our 3.9 or 0.00039,096 area, that lower range. But again, the momentum isn't really there to support that. So it'll be interesting to see whether that is the case or whether we get that break to the upside. Now, on the 8-hour chart, we can see again oversold. So we're seeing consistent messages here across the 1, the 4, and the 8-hour stochastic RSIs, where they're all in the oversold position, telling me that we're probably going to start to see a bit of a swing to the upside, at least on the shorter time frames. On the daily, we do need to see this correction continue though, and so we should be cautious here. Okay, so as I kind of lower off that stochastic RSI, bring this to the downside, and although we have got this bearish parallel channel here, we should also be aware that we've only tested the upper side twice at the moment, so an upward swing to this upper area might be something to expect before we start to see a bigger pull to the downside. And if this is the case, then we've got a couple of different options to kind of be reviewing here. We've obviously got the resistance up at 0.00054514. Okay, so the upward swing could be there, and then of course a breakdown to further to the downside. Now, if we were to think of this as a three-wave structural move, and from this upper end, and we were to retest that resistance line just up here, then our negative daily chart could correct us down to 0.00033374. Okay, and if I put that a little price tag down here as well, we can kind of see what that looks like. I'm just going to put this down to 74 right on there, and then remove our fibs. Okay, so we end up with this kind of structural move. A couple of things that are going on. Let me map these now. We have this kind of potential move here where we have an A, B, and C move like so. And I think this is actually really probable. This basically continues to set these higher lows and these higher highs as we continue this parallel channel upwards before potentially breaking down in what might be a big corrective structure. And I'm going to put it up to this resistance line like so. There is, of course, that wild card, and that wild card is that we actually break down much sooner and we just head down towards this 0.00039. And for that to work, we have to map this with a little kind of structure just inside here, like so. Okay, so that one there I'm not overly confident in. I'm going to just make that red just to say that it's a slightly different structure. That's something that might actually play out. But for the most part, I think we've got the momentum for upward swing. We've got the pocket of liquidity higher because people are feeling negative. They're feeling like shorting the market. But all the data really suggests that actually we might push up a little bit higher before we break on down. So if we are in these leverage positions, one of the things I personally would be looking for would be making sure that a stop loss is above this area here at 0.0005930. And that is because it would break the entire structure in terms of bearishness if we were to go higher than that. Okay, so keeping a close eye on these various different kind of things going on here with Lunar Classic, but essentially that's kind of my thoughts and opinions on where we sit right now. I think there's definitely some kind of volatility to be expected with leverage trading, and obviously pockets of liquidity that people can take advantage of, specifically when we start seeing, you know, contracts of over 1,000 times the power of what Luna is actually trading at. We start to see that volatility increase dramatically. So we should be very cautious at this point. But ultimately, that's kind of my thoughts. Let me know what yours are down in the comments down below. And of course, if you haven't yet liked or subscribed, you know what to do, and I'll catch you in the next one.